Yeah, we're live. 7:50. Oh, just clicked on 7:15. A little bit late. Just getting stuff done. Making sure I had the right photos and all of that. If you guys take a look at very quickly, take a look at the thumbnail and look close, and you'll see just how bad things were. If you take a look at the bearings in that, this was only bad on one side. The other side actually was replaced it anyway. I replaced both of them because 350,000 miles is definitely time. And on that one was grinding pretty bad. I mean, the thing didn't even want to spin, so they were bound up pretty bad. But if you look close, you can see all the, some of the bearings are like side by side, nice in a row, like you would expect bearings to be, like wheel bearings to be. Some of them have turned 90 degrees and now they're laying sideways. And there's a number of them, and some of them weren't in there at all. Some of them dropped out onto the floor or onto the ground when I was doing the swap. So needless to say, because for one to be able to turn sideways and have that much room to do that, the one next to it has to not be there anymore. So several of them are like that. So a bunch of the bearings are gone. It got super hot. What I was worried about when I was doing this, and so I have a funny story about doing this bearing install. Neighbor, but when I started doing this, I thought, I wonder how bad this is. Like how hot did this get? What I was wondering is if I was going to have to cut the axle. It's a 4-wheel drive. I was going to have to cut the axle shaft and take all of that out as assembly and then replace that, because I wondered if it was the splines, if it was going to be like welded in there. I didn't know what was bad and how hot it got and whether they were like had become one. They had embraced that and become one with each other. As it turned out, I was able to knock it off. So it worked out pretty good. So I was able to knock that off, put new ones on, got the super good, like 3-year warranty ones, whatever that is, and then replacing. It's definitely something that should have been done long ago, because it was making noise when I turned. And I thought, well, like on front-wheel drive cars, that's a bad like half shaft. But this isn't the case. I mean, both boots are sealed up and all that's good on these. But what it was is that those bearings were grinding, and so it was not good. But I was able to fix that and get it done. But while I was trying to do that, you guys have been following this. I went down to see Dulcich and ran on his dyno. We ran a 340, and we compared the 360 heads, stock 360 heads, to a set of airflow research heads, to aluminum heads. So big power. I'm doing a video on that. When I was coming back, and I had to borrow my son's Camaro to do that because the truck was not working. I couldn't drive it. The wheel was locked up. So I had to borrow my son's Camaro to go drive down there and do it. And when I was coming back, I went by the auto parts store. This is like at 8:30 or 9 at night or whatever. Went by the auto parts store and I bought the bearing assemblies. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have the bearing assemblies. That way he can take his car in the morning. He can go to school. I have the truck and I don't have a way to go anywhere. But when I fix the truck, I'll have a way to go somewhere. That was my thinking. Little did I know. And I remember standing, waiting for the guy to grab the bearings in the auto parts store and looking around and thinking, I feel like there's something like that. There's something that I need to get. There's something here that I need. But I didn't know what it was. So I got the bearings. I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. I'm going. I take off and give my son's car back so he can take it off in the morning. And I go to do it in the morning. I'm taking everything apart. I'm like, get the brakes off and do all that stuff. I'm like, oh yeah. There's a really big nut holding, because it's 4-wheel drive. There's a really big nut holding that on, holding the shaft on, holding the axle or half shaft, whatever you're going to call it. Big spindle nut, let's call it. Okay, I got some big socks, not a problem. Go in and grab the biggest sock that I have, go to put it on there. I'm like, nope, that's not even close. It's a 36 or something like that, and I didn't have that. So I'm like, okay, well, I know my buddy around the corner, which I'm going to do a video with him. You guys are going to see. He's the guy that does refurbishes the gauge cluster. So it's going to be a good video. It'll be cool stuff, because it's definitely that all these older cars are going to need. And he's got a couple of cool turbo trucks and stuff. So it'll be good. So I'm like, I'm going to go see him. And then I'm sure he probably has one. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't have a way to get over there. I'm thinking, okay, what do I have? The Trail 90 flat tire. The bike that I've been riding, because I've been exercising on a bike, got a flat tire on the way back on the last ride. I'm like, okay, both of those are down. The GoPed, nope. go ped's down too. It's got a bad like line or whatever, and the fuel tank's wonky. So I don't got that. I got a skateboard out of mothballs. It's stuck in a storage. The bushings have all deteriorated. So on one of them, the front or the back, I mean, it's universal. It goes both ways. The bushings are completely out of it. So I'm like, I got nothing to, I mean, I could walk over there, but I got nothing to go over there and get this stuff. So I'm getting the GoPed running. And so I cut hoses and finagled it and zip tied the thing over, but then I had no gas. I'm like, the gas can that we normally have, I have a gas can so we fill the various things. Sometimes the GoPed back when I was riding it a lot, and also the lawnmower and stuff. I'm like, okay, I go get gas and have it in this gas can. I go to get the gas can and I go to pour it out, and it basically evaporates before it comes down and gets into the GoPed tank. I'm like, oh great. So I got it fixed, but I don't have any fuel for it. Wait, there's fuel in the lawnmower. I put fuel in the lawnmower. So I find a hose, siphon the fuel out of the lawnmower. It's like, it's not a gallon. It's not a half gallon. It's like a tiny little thing, which wasn't full anyway. So I siphon all of the gas that's out of there and then pour it into the GoPed. And then I go and rummage through my cabinets and find some 2-stroke oil, because I usually have some because I ride the GoPed. Figured, I don't know how much that is, a thimble full. How much oil do I use? I just pour some in there. I'm like, look, it's going to be fine. So I take it out and it doesn't want to start for a while. I'm like, okay. And I finally get it. I'm riding. So I'm riding. Wow. When I go over here and I tell him the story, he's like, man, it's like it doesn't want to happen. He goes, I do have that socket and I've used it maybe twice or whatever. So it's good that somebody else is using it. We were laughing. I'm like, yeah, now you're amortizing it. Now you have a socket that people are using and it's going to help out. And I said, dude, that's fantastic. I appreciate it. And so I went over and it was the right size, buzzed the nut off, got that stuff all out, got it all swapped out. And I was working on the second one, and he comes riding over, showing off on his electric scooter, which didn't have any problems and didn't have to siphon gas for it or anything. He came over, so I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm like, yeah, no, it's all good. So I was able to get those fixed, and then I was able to, and so I could then take my truck. I could go over and buy a tube, fix the tube on the thing. The GoPed was now running. The skateboard just got thrown back in the thing. So, and the Trail 90 is not yet fixed. When I tried to do I have tubes for it. I bought tubes and tires for the Trail 90. But when I went to do the tire swap, there's a little band inside that covers basically the spokes, because it's an old spoke wheel. And there's a band in there that covers that, stops it from popping the inner tube. And that thing snapped because it's a Trail 90 and it's from the 70s or whatever. And so it was the original one, I'm sure, and just deteriorated from age. And so I need to get another one of those, and I'll have to look around and see if I can find one. If not, I'm going to tape it back together and just run it and put the inner tube in there and get it all good. So I just want to have everything running. I want to have everything working so that I'm not stuck just in case something like that happens. But everything's good now. So that's all awesome. One of the things we'll probably talk about it more tomorrow, because I need to get more information, because it happened like right at the end of the day. Jimmy had taken everything apart and was swapping the cam in his 5.3, and they had put the other cam in. They're putting the Truck Plus cam in it because we want to do a bunch of testing on the Truck Plus cam, which I'm excited about, which are on sale right now. So go to richardholderperformance.com. From what they were originally, they're like $100 off right now. So go get a Truck Plus. Right now is the time to do it. So if you're going to get one, go get it. $100 off, save $100. It's now the same price as the Truck Plus or the low buck truck. So we have just, so you're doing good. But he went to put that in, and they heard a noise inside the motor, like something fell down into the pan, made a metallic noise. I'm like, what's that? He called me. He said, what do you think it is? I said, well, it can only be some of the things that you now have disturbed when you're doing the cam. I said, did a lifter fall through? He said, we put push rods in all of them. All the lifters are there. I said, did a lifter break? And we're both brainstorming there. I'm thinking, what are all the things that could happen? Did a lifter roller fall in there? He said, I don't know. I said, what about the bearing? He goes, it could be, because they had trouble getting the cam out. It seemed like it was dragging a little bit. I said, yeah, you got to sometimes work it around to make sure it's not hitting a lifter and all that. And then he showed me a picture of the camshaft and that bearing, or that cam journal, the bearing journal. It's not good. Looks like it's got some heat in it. And that was the stock cam. And I'm like, I wonder what's going on. So I think what had happened is that when they put the new cam in, that bearing now was so loose that it probably had spun or whatever. And then, so I'm going to find out tomorrow if that indeed is the case, if that's the bearing. Because when I was talking to them last, they were taking the pan off. And because they heard something and they're like, yeah, we're going to find out what that is. Definitely. We need to know. And so we're going to drain the oil and take the pan out and see what it is, because we don't want loose stuff just dangling around in there. So I'll know tomorrow. We'll talk more about that. Hopefully we'll have some photos of whatever it is. I'm hoping it's not a cam bearing, because then the motor's got to come out and all that. So that's not going to be good. But it's another story. That's the thing. We're going to start a poll. Okay. And hitting pan the cam swap. Okay. Did Jimmy hear the cam bearing bounce around and hit the pan during the cam swap? Is that what he heard? Let's see what people think. There. All right. I don't, if you don't look at it, it doesn't matter. I think it would matter if one of them wasn't there. Less drag though, right? Less bearing drag. You don't need the middle one. Richard, I commented a week ago, probably about my LS Elm 7 smoking from the block. I fixed it. It was so stupid. You got to tell us what it was. So that's why we're here. We're all here to learn. What do you think it was, man? Or what was it? Indianapolis is in the house. How could you miss out on the Monterey Historics? It's so close to you. I have been to Monterey Historics, and it's very, very cool. You're right. But I don't have the extra time, unfortunately, to go do that. Definitely. The hubs, definitely smoked. It was bad. Yeah, have you guys taken a look at that photo and saw all the sideways bearings? That can't be good. Controversial. I don't mind at all changing cam bearings, but it's not something you want to do in the vehicle. Good evening. Hello, everybody. An axle nut. Yep. I've watched the one-sided Fowler log header versus tubular header video. I played around with a set of tubular headers until I realized I can't fit them properly, and will be building my own logs. You can make a lot of power with the logs depending on how they're designed, but eventually at some point, at some high horsepower thing, that header probably flows more and could ultimately make more power, assuming that you're not already at the limit of the turbos. And you're not at some power level where it doesn't matter. Like if you're gonna make 1,000 horsepower, I just put those kind of logs on there. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. I can't find any FSP for sale, so mine will be similar. I plan on using 2.5 inch. Yeah, that's fine. You're not going to be able to do a bad thing. It's for 62 twins with 101, L33 stage 3 Summit turbo cam. Any tips on size and wastegate placement? Well, the first thing I want to know is what is your desired power output? Because I'm going to suggest a different cam. If you already have it, you can run that one, but you don't need that cam unless you're going for a bajillion horsepower. Dumb question. Why did you just steal some gas from the truck? That is another thing that I could have siphoned out of. I didn't have a long enough hose for that, but that was on the to-do list. If I could find it, I found a length of hose that was like perfect for the gas can in the lawnmower, and it just went right into the other can. I siphoned all of that was out of. I mean, I could have tipped the lawnmower a little bit to get a little more. All I needed was to get over to his place and back, which was not very far. 2009 GM trucks, 4-piston calipers up front, have 20 by 9-inch wheels typically, but the spares are 17 and 8, so 17 wheel will fit with correct offset. My buddy that I borrowed the thing from, we were talking about the brakes, and he said the 4-piston stuff won't work with the wheels that I have. I didn't try it, but that's what he told me. I had a set of FSP twin turbo manifolds. I actually sold them back to Joey after he got hurt. He was having issues filling orders while he was healing up. I still have a cast stainless T4 manifold. Never believe this. This is the second one I've seen in 3 days. I'm officially bad luck. Joel, man, what's going on? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So that means that you guys got to pull that engine, right? Definitely a cam bearing. Richard, did you figure out what was wrong with the front end of your truck? Yeah, I posted that already. Wheel bearing, axle. Sorry if we went over this already. Yeah, just Dustin, take a look at the thumbnail, and it shows you what it was, but it was a wheel bearing. Or a roller lifter fell. Yep. If your lifter tray is worn out, it's possible for them to fall. Yep. I remember we were talking about it being gaskets being burned in since they were brand new. And we said it might be valve covers and gaskets, but nope, it wasn't either. Turns out it was. He's leaving us in suspense. Let's see. Is a Tahoe 2-wheel drive? Jimmy's Tahoe is 2-wheel drive. If so, pretty easy to get the pan off. Yeah, they've taken the pan off already. Is it normal to see a white evaporation when I open the engine cover? What's a white evaporation? Are you talking about like blow by or something coming out of the motor? PVC outlets, I had little filters on it. I ended up putting a vacuum hose and connecting them to the intake manifold to stop the smoking and misfire. You definitely have to have big enough openings in the filters to work as breathers. If they're not big enough, you'll build pressure. You don't have to have the engine drawn in, which I don't like. We don't ever do that. I mean, I have it on my truck that I'm driving around just because it's all stock, but we don't ever do that on the dyno. We just breathe it. We just vent it to atmosphere, but the vents have to be big. Talked last week about the L83 build. Got the L83 on the stand today. Waiting on the BTR cam. 660 dual titanium springs. We're going ARP studs L21. Does that camshaft need that big of a spring? Because if not, I wouldn't go with that spring. That spring's not better. If it's a 600 lift cam, you only need 550 lift springs. 800 and 900 horsepower. I come from Subarus where heads flow like coffee straws. I might have overshot the cam. Yeah, 800 to 900 you just get with like one of our Ripper cams or a low buck truck camshaft or a Truck Plus, any of those, and a G42 turbo, and you could go way beyond where that is. So the big cam doesn't help you there. All that it does is hurt low speed power and boost response. And many more parts. Wish you had a Gen 5 cams, and we would have went with your cams. The BTR stuff is excellent. I just am saying that on the cam and spring thing, you don't need a 550 lift cam with 660 springs. That's not a good idea. 6-inch wheels don't fit the JF3, JF7 brakes. It's weird because my AFR was around 18 to 1. I couldn't get down the moment I put the vacuum hose on, the airfill dropped. Then was the fitting of, did you have a vacuum leak? Because all of those have to be hooked up on a factory setup. Otherwise, you will have a vacuum leak and it will show lean. Would you recommend to rebuild my 425 Cadillac motor? I don't know. I think Dulcich had one of those done. I think he's doing it. But I don't know if Cadco does those early ones. And I don't know if he's, I mean, now that he passed away, I don't know if they're still doing that company. Got an old Mr. Gasket fuel pump and about 30 feet of old 3/8 fuel line or fuse to part with. Just, yeah, because stuff happens, I know. And if I was at West Tech, we have like all kinds of excess hose and stuff. I probably should have some around here. Do you recommend changing the oil before startup after swapping my heads and cam, like a more zinc heavy oil? LS1 with synthetic oil on it right now. You don't need zinc oil with a hydraulic roller cam if that's what you have. And you don't need to change the oil. We do cam stuffs all the time without that. What's the largest cam you can run in a stock piston 5.3 or 6.0 without having to cut the pistons? What is it you're trying? Let's go with something different. That's not the right question. What is it you're trying to achieve? Because there isn't one cam size that I can give you because it depends a lot on the valve events. So you might get away with this intake duration and this LSA and not this one and this intake center line. And there's a lot of things, but something in the mid to high 230s at 50 is something you definitely want to check and see if it will fit. How much is the normal cost to add a G42 turbo on a 6-liter to make 800 horsepower with a possible increase in horsepower in the future? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that because I don't know what you're starting with. But you can go on to the store and add the stuff up that you need. Use a cheap conventional oil after 500 miles to change to good synthetic. I have the stock truck intake manifold. So yes, I think it had a vacuum leak. I'm trying to get a beach. If you have a vacuum leak, it should have a high idle also. What do you usually use for timing retard on boost? Anything besides the MSD? Lots of people, if you're talking about a carbureted motor, the boost retard stuff is the stuff that we've used. We've used MSD, but Crane had versions of it. Other people had some too. I don't know what's out there anymore. When were those springs to prevent valve float when we go with the G42 turbo that cam runs 613, 632? Springs are what BTR recommends. Oh, if you have a 632, then I would pick then the 660 lift cam is fine. I just thought it was a smaller lift. Press fit wheel bearings, massive pain, bolt is in the way. As for cam bearings, better than replacing a head, a ported head. Press fit wheel bearings. The press fit wheel bearings were not a problem because the whole hub came off. It was just 3 bolts. That was actually very easy. There's no high idle because it was misfiring. Okay. Do you remember what springs you used on the comp BR300s? No, because there's not a spring set up because it would depend a lot on whatever heads you're using. We had to measure and science it out, I think. But I think that if we ran airflow research heads on it, they already had enough spring for that cam. 88,000 mile L33. I pulled one piston, checked ring gap, and it was 30. I didn't bother pulling anymore after that. All right. Go. You can do that. I thought about doing that when I had the L33, and I'm like, I'm gonna check them. It's apart. I've already, it's coming apart. How much horsepower LS1, sloppy stage 2, Enforcer 210s, L6 manifold make? I don't know. I don't remember on the LS1 stuff. A 228 cam and LS1. I'm thinking that it's 500-ish or low 500s or something. Just off the top of my head. Did Jimmy hear the cam bearing bounce around and hit the pan during the cam swap? 57%. Are saying yes. The tree fort's coming along good. Ordered a bunch more stuff for it. Gonna have a zip line, slide, Gatling guns that light up, all sorts of good stuff. So it should be interesting. What air-to-air intercoolers do you recommend in a fair price range? I'm trying to think of the ones that we've used. I've used the ones from ProCharger. I don't know where they are price-wise. We've used the ones from CX Racing. Those were back when I used them way back in the day. Those seemed to be fairly affordable. What kind of weight and oil should I run running an engine for the first time? What kind of engine is it? It's an LS, is it a small block, big block? What is it? What is it? Do you think raising the RPM to rev higher in an LY6 engine makes the engine unreliable, or is there a way to raise it safely? Anytime you run more RPM in an engine, it will reduce the life of the engine. Every time. So the lower the RPM you run the engine at, the longer it will last. This also assumes all the other things, changing the oil regularly and doing all that stuff. So that's not the question. That's definitely true. The question is, and since you're talking about raising it, you should not be talking about that. You should be talking about how much power you want to make. And then we'll show you how you make that amount of power. And then we'll show you where it makes that power based on the combination. And then you just have to not worry about unreliable, okay? Because it's not stock anymore. So it's not going to last 350,000 miles. It's going to last less than that. No matter what you do to it, it's going to be less than that. So the question is, will it last as long as I have this vehicle and I have this motor? Probably so. Wouldn't it have like a ring noise to it more so than a thud, like a lifter? I've heard you can't run heads with 2+ valves on a stock bore 283. If you try to bore one 4-inch, will have too thin of a cylinder walls. It's true. I know the old 302 is a 283 with a 4-inch bore. Guys used to bore, they used to make 401s out of those 283s. So some of the blocks, I'm not that familiar with the 283 blocks, but some of the blocks would go that far. So I don't know which ones. Honestly, I wouldn't do that to a 283. That's not the direction I would go. I just go to the wrecking yard and get a 350 block, and you'd be fine. 3 bolts and a sledge. Thanks, Rich. I just finished my head and cam swap in my LS1. Trick flow heads. Trick flows, I'm waiting on my base tune. Then off to the dyno. Valve springs were mentioned, getting me thinking, are BTR duals and tie retainers bad on a 550-ish lift cam like a low buck truck? You don't need that. And I don't think that they'll work as well as a 550 spring. And you certainly don't need tie retainers. I think I saw Brule on Finnegan's road trip video a little bit ago. Do you guys still keep in touch? Yeah, I talked to Steve a lot. We mostly talk about guns now because that's what he's into. Small block Ford. Okay, dart block, AFR heads. Okay. All right. What kind of weight of oil should I run for the bearing? The engine, not, I mean, now that we've got the big thing out of the way, it's not an LS, it's a small block Ford. Now the weight of the oil would depend on what kind of bearing clearance you have and what you have, the pump and all that stuff. But you can't go wrong with like a 530. And you should run, I'm sure it's a hydraulic roller cam. I'm hoping it's a hydraulic roller cam. You can run zinc and stuff. You can run break-in oil. It's not really necessary with the hydraulic roller deal. You can run break-in oil and then change it to something good after it breaks in. Back to porting cylinder heads. 3 more to go. Nice. Think about doing that as a fail-safe, but this engine came with LS6 beehives, so I left them in. You can find dual springs that have the same rate as single springs. Yeah, you can, but there's no reason to buy a dual spring. Well, there might be. I've had a single spring break before, so having the second spring could be helpful. But there's no reason, there's no need to go to that expense. So swapping heads likely, they already have said springs and retainers. I'd rather not take your cam, eventually be going in. Okay, that's good. We've run lots of them with the bigger springs. Like when we're doing the comparison between the low buck truck and the truck Norris cam, or the truck plus cam, we had the truck plus springs in it, but we're only making 3 or 4 pulls with each of the cams. Not a big deal. Not raising the RPM for power only, for sound as well. What would be the weak point? You shouldn't raise it for sound. That should not be your thing. You should make the power that you need to make in the RPM range that you need to make it in. But there's a lot of bad things. Your oiling system, that will be problems with RPM. Valve train, definitely the stability of the cam, the springs, the oscillation, the oiling system. You got all kinds of things that are not good at RPM. Holy Sniper low ram versus an LS3 stock manifold, not even close. The stock LS3 manifold is going to be way better, probably all the way up to, depending on what motor you're testing it on, like at least 6,000, but maybe 6,500. Then the short ram, then the short runner manifold can maybe become a little better, depending on the combination. Something else I've been learning as I get into LS turbos is that so much of the boost control is based on turbine pressure and dome pressure. Turbine pressure is rarely thought about in JDM land. Why wouldn't back pressure be measured on any turbo application? Dome pressure is not that important, because if the wastegate is closed, the wastegate is closed. If you have a boost controller that also has pressure going to the top, you will hold the wastegate closed until the desired opening point. So you don't have to have 50 pounds going to the top. You just need to have enough to where it's not open, and then all of a sudden it's open. I had a spring and a double comp spring break and save me. When I spec springs for daily driver, I started doing double springs. I had that happen on my Engine Masters motor right before Engine Masters. It was not a good deal because I was using beehive springs because we were trying to get power from the springs too, which we did. What is it like, 10 PSI per 100 horsepower or something? Yeah, Famous Amos checking in. ProCharge 8.1, making it happen. We're getting comments from people that are checking in with us about turbos that are like, yeah, I want to make 600, 700 horsepower. And other turbo guys are saying that your turbo is too small. I'm like, really? Well, we made 800 with it. For 800 horsepower is not the turbo. The GTX 3584 RS turbo is not the one that I recommend. I would definitely push you into a G42. But for stuff lower than that, and for somebody that wants immediate boost response, if you want the turbo to do that, that's a perfect turbo for it, because they're all wanting to sell, a big boy turbo. Again, that's like selling the big cam. Oh yeah, you got to have the stage 2 or stage 3. No, you don't. And you also, if all you wanted was 600 horsepower, you wanted to go from 300 to 600 horsepower, you don't want a big turbo for that. I mean, if you want something laggy, then yeah, do that. Put a short runner manifold on it. Put a really big camshaft in it. Then you can have all the bad, and also make it a 4.8 so that you can have all the bad response that you want. If I'm boosting an LY6 and it just wants to make 700 horsepower, can I just add a ring gap and focus on the turbo without upgrading heads, compression, etc.? Yeah, again, you're asking questions. The questions that you should be asking all need to come after tell me how much power you want. If you want to make 700 horsepower, that's just an LY6 with one of our mild cams in it and springs. Obviously, you have to have the right injectors and fuel pump, but in a G42 turbo, and you don't have to run very much boost, and it'll make 700 horsepower. It'll also make 800 or 900 or 1,000 if you turn the boost up. But ring gap is a good idea on any of these turbo applications. But you don't have to change the heads. You don't have to change the intake manifold. You don't have to change the compression. You don't have to do any of that. You just put a turbo on it that will supply the amount of power that you want to make, and then away you go. Have you ever had success pushing big power through stock throttle bodies on LS builds? Also, do you have any videos up on intro to turbos? Want to learn more about setups, say back pressure, and how to monitor? The way that you monitor back pressure is you drill and tap the exhaust manifold, and then you put a steel fitting in it, like a pipe on one side, and then we use a flare on the other. And then you run steel or aluminum or copper tubing so that you could screw your flare nut onto there. And then what we do is run loops of that, and then we connect that to you can connect it right to a vacuum or boost gauge. We then run it to rubber line. They just hose clamp on there. And we run it to rubber line, and then the rubber line goes to the fitting for a boost gauge, or for us, it's for the dyno. And then you can monitor back pressure. It's really, really, really simple. And pushing big power through a stock throttle body, yes, you can. It's the size of like a 78 millimeter throttle body or whatever becomes less of a problem when you're forcing air through it. I don't know how much you're trying to force through it or what intake manifold you're using, but it would be better for you to use a throttle body that's sized for the opening of the intake, just so that you don't get turbulence. But the turbo will blow a lot of air even through a stock throttle body. We made 725 or 28 with a 65 millimeter throttle body on our Honda, and would have done it with an even smaller throttle body. It's just that we happen to have that one. Just got here. My understanding is cam bearings exist in a quantum state of flux and are both good and bad. They're like Schrodinger's bearings. They can only be bad if you observe them. I switched from beehives to dual springs on the 243s. Okay. Better question. Let's see. Scrolling. I've seen you run a comp 469 cam in your testing. Just can't remember if it requires fly cutting of pistons. However, I would like to do a little tighter LSA. The 469 fit. I haven't tried one with a 110. That will definitely change piston to valve clearance. It will reduce it. So you might have to test it. You might have to test piston to valve clearance. We don't just look at turbine pressure. Boost is normally just controlled between compressor and wastegate. I run 35 PSI, so I have to use the both ports because they don't make strong enough springs. So even like a 20-pound spring, and then you're running a controller to the top and the bottom, you can't get 35 pounds. I haven't run at 35. We run 30, but not 35. I don't run dual springs on my stuff. I run beehives. I run pack 1219s on my big block. Just make custom retainers. Nice. The motor is an L9962 stage 2 TSP. Debating on ProCharger going supercharger. Both of those are superchargers. Low ram intake would be to keep it under stock hood dimensions. Yeah, no, I get that. That's why the BTR, the low ram, the BTR Trinity, which is another good manifold, better than the low ram makes more power than the low ram. But I understand that. I understand why you would do that. And also, if you did a ProCharger or other centrifugal supercharger, they like RPM because the boost increases with RPM. So those short runner manifolds that want to make power at high RPM will do better at the very top end. Unfortunately, a centrifugal blower also doesn't have a lot of boost in the low and mid range, and that intake also doesn't make a lot of power in the low and mid range. So it might feel a little soft. Been tuning Subarus for 10 years. Saw my first CO2 LS boost setup the other day at a track. Dome pressure sounds so much better with the ability to run lower pressure springs. Yeah, if you want a wider dynamic range of running 4 pounds and 40 pounds or whatever. Do we need to upgrade the springs and lifters before adding the turbo? If you're going to put a camshaft in it, you're already doing springs. The lifters are not necessary. Someone told me my ported 62 millimeter throttle body is not big enough for my 70 millimeter turbo. Should I get a 70 millimeter throttle body to match, or does it matter? Again, what is the motor, and what is the power output, and what is the intake manifold? The size of the turbo and the size of the throttle body have nothing to do with each other. It's a good thing there is DFM VVT delete kits for LT Ecotech engines. We're using stock LA3 Gen 5 intake with G42, 800 horsepower to the crank. Yeah, that's easy. Building a motor now. Trans is being built. Research shows LT4 HP pump and injector should support it. Okay. And then on the cam, are you changing the lobe on the drive lobe for the pump on the cam too? I've run at something north of 30 once. Boost reference to the wastegate. Melted it. Had 17 pounds of spring. 3-bar map. So no idea how much it was. It's getting hot in here. Still has original push rods, rockers, oil pump, and timing chain. That's all good stuff. Who has the 5.3 that they made into a 5.7? Is that Shadow Ops? Is that Blue Collar? Who is that? Somebody sound off. BTR stage 1 cam has a 38% increase. Field lobe. Okay. Cool. Chuck Norris only had 14. How familiar are you with AR5 transmissions, Lowbuck T56 or what? I'm not familiar with them. Shadow Ops, do you still have your stock injectors in that? And do you have the ability to, do you have a flash programmer or whatever they are? What I'm getting at is we might want to send you injectors and a tune for you to test for us. How's Tahoe build coming? Well, Jimmy was swapping the cam on it today, and we think we might have had a setback. It was running fine. Lowbuck T56, yeah, it's not going to be a 6-speed, but it is a lower dollar transmission, certainly. What did the AR5 come out of? What vehicle and application did they use that in? I suppose I could look online. The AR5 is a durable 5-speed transmission, hasten and various GM vehicles, 98 up, known for its strength and ability. 04 to 2012. Yeah, we don't want that. Colorado's, Canyons, Isuzus. So did they then put it, if it's in a Colorado or a Canyon, did they put it behind the Atlas motors then? Or did they put it behind an LS? AR5 derived maybe. Delphi Multec 2 25-pound injectors. I unfortunately have no programmer right now, and when I got the truck tuned, it was with another person. So did Shadow Ops, have you had it tuned with those injectors? With the cam that you have in it now? Hummer, H3, Saturn, Sky, Pontiac Solstice, Colorado. I have what I call the Trash Panda unknown mileage, LQ4. Same with 862 heads, Trailblazer SS, TSP, Chupacabra. Yeah, all that's good. That about makes a relatively cheap adapter that can mate it to a 4L60 bell housing and uses F-body clutches. I don't know if you're all aware, but word to the wise, you want a CD09 6-speed out of the 350Z. Cheap to get and handle all the power. I looked in the AR5, they can't handle nearly as much power. Or can you find 350Zs in wrecking yards? 5-cylinder Colorado would have an AR5. For a daily driver, 6-liter, low buck truck cam, targeting mid-range power with the GTX 3584 or G42. What is the desired power output? Like, where do you see yourself being? I don't think I would pick a 3584 for a 6-liter, especially after how we saw the G42 work. If you have a cam 6-liter, I think I'd pick a G42 because then that gives you room to grow. Yes, and it's just runs tune due to trying to stall out before snapping the throttle in reverse and hit. Okay. Was it dyno tuned or any of that, or did he just send a tune that allows you to drive around? Guessing it's due to the cam and the 26-28 stall. Yours is a Chopacabra or something, right? Shadow? Air 5 can be built to handle 5 to 600, but doesn't have as much support. Are Bosch injectors 1000 cc's any good? I don't remember trying the Bosch versions. We have injectors at richardoldnerperformance.com. I think ours are FICs, and we're working on another set to offer too. It was a rolling on-site tune, no dyno. Okay. You just got one for 800 in a yard. Also new, you can get them for 3,000 brand new at a dealership. Stock Air 5 behind their 800 wheel horsepower 6-liter. Take a lot more power than they were ever intended to. Do you recommend a cam VVT upgrade for heavy vehicles that do occasional towing? Do you want to not have the stock camshaft in there anymore? Most guys get rid of the VVT. There are VVT cams out there that are upgrades from the stock VVT. Most of them have either phaser limiters or eliminators, let's call them, or locks, because there's only so much you can move it once you start improving the specs of the cam, so changing duration and stuff. You can't move it as far anymore. Or you could just eliminate that and but you're definitely going to have it tuned to do that, which you're going to have it tuned for a cam anyways. I needed to pick up some FIC 100s, 1000s for my ProCharger truck. Deck 80s don't fit. For my searches, the CD009 are so easy to find in the $1,000 to $1,500 range. New ones, let me know, Amos. We'll get you taken care of. New ones can be bought from Nissan for $2,000, but you're limited to a custom unsprung six-buck clutch. It's not going to be very good for drivability, that's for sure. My Camon's a BTR truck Norris. Okay, I got the Chopacabra for the 4.8, but when the 4.8 died, it sat in a box in a closet. Uh-oh. Well, I mean, the Chopacabra and the truck Norris are going to have the same tune anyway, so that's not a big deal. Do you want to try one? Do you want to try something with bigger injectors and a tune? What do you think about the Frankenstein heads? They look incredible from just seeing them flipping through the internet. I don't know. I've never tried them. 800, 900, realistically 700, 750, but it's in a 2,000-pound XO truck. Okay. Yeah, that's still G42. Honestly, when even though we've made 800 horsepower at like 15 pounds on a cammed 5.3, I think it had our low buck truck camshaft in it. Even though we've done that with the 3584 turbo, it's not what I recommend for 800 horsepower. We can do it, and a guy could do it, but I never recommend you running the maximum for any turbo. So if you are wanting to make 1,000 and you buy a turbo that can just make 1,000, you should not have that turbo. You should have a turbo that does more than 1,000, so you can safely make 1,000. If you're only going to run 1,000 one time on the dyno and then run it at 700, then yeah, get that turbo, because maxing it out and overspeeding the impeller and blowing the turbo up. But you're going to be running it in a range where it's going to be effective, and you'll also with the turbo that's only 1,000 horsepower, you'll have better response. So yes, definitely do that. But if you're running it all of it, don't do that. Get one that's 1,200 so that you can easily do 1,000. Watch a video of yours and determined to get the Chopacabra due to the price. This was in 22, 23. Okay. Is the Chopacabra less than a truck Norris is?
I mean, we like the BTR guys. They're awesome. They help us out all the time. And that Truck Norris obviously is a really good cam. I'm sure it easily outsells the Chupacabra. But when we did the testing in terms of like the power output, they seemed like they were pretty comparable. I have no tuning experience. Maybe after I finally get hot tuners, I will. What we want to send you is a tuner with our tune loaded in it, and just swap the injectors and put it in, and then go drive it around. That's what we want. That's what we want to happen. But we want to see if that's going to happen. We have already done it ourselves. We just want to make sure that if we send it out to a customer, that it will actually do that. At the time, it was $50 less, and yes, they were splitting hairs. Yeah, they're good cams. I like them. I got no bad things to say. All good stuff. Anybody that gets that, and like I said, that or the Truck Norris or the Lowbuck truck, or there might be others that are kind of like that too, that I haven't tested that people make. That would be the same tune, as long as the displacement is the same and injectors are the same. That's all fine. From what I found, the T56 doesn't have the synchro power handling that the CD has. However, RPM trans builds on with the billet shafts, 1,000 horsepower capable, put you near 3,500-ish. Clutch is probably better. T56. I have a T56 for my 5.3. TSP is 3 hours away. Okay. 3 hours away is still far enough away where you're not just going to go there all the time. T56 Magnum. So we're going to close out our poll. Did Jimmy hear the cam bearing bounce around and hit the pan during the cam swap? 48% are saying yes, and 52% are saying no. So what are the other guys? What do you guys think it is? Do you think it's a lifter? Do you think a lifter fell? He thought that all of them were there. Would a billet core cam over a cast cam core be beneficial for heavy marine use? When is a billet cam really needed? I don't think the marine use has anything to do with that, unless it gets water in there or whatever and would somehow deteriorate the cam. Having a stouter metallurgy or thickness or hardness or whatever for the cam usually is more beneficial under heavy load situations. And a marine engine doesn't load the cam. What loads the cam are usually springs and RPM. And so in those situations, like in really, really high RPM drag race things, people tend to DLC coat them or have billet cams or whatever. Those are the ones that I've seen. Would there be a way of restoring the tune that's already in the ECU? Yes, definitely. You could just reload it. You could put the stock injectors back in and reload it without any problem. I think if you don't see the cam bearings, are fine. Presume it fits the G3 EFI rails. What intake do you have? Is it a truck? Because the injectors that we have are for the truck manifolds. T56 is amazing. Just takes work to get it high horsepower capacity. Can you sponsor my Sierra single cab turbo kit? There's only one of those in existence, so no, we wouldn't be able to do that. It's on Jimmy's truck. T56s are behind motors that don't normally rev that high. I guess why the CD and the AR5 synchros shift nicer at RPM. Download and save the stock tune before you flash a new one. We could also just send you another ECU so that you could just take that ECU out and just leave in the one you have. For a fuel pump shaft for what? Yeah, blue collar. If the truck manifold will fit and you have it and it's cheap, I would use. That's as good as the LS3 intake manifold. Guys go with the LS3 on a lot of things, Camaros and Corvettes and stuff, where hood clearance is an issue, and then those fit. I mean, the LS3 manifold is really good. It works very, very well, as we've seen in all the testing. The truck version of that works exactly the same in my testing, the LY6 stuff that I tested. And we've tested two different ones, or they're the same design.
I think that they're the same, but it makes the same power. So if you have the hood clearance for it, it works. Gen 4 LS engine comes factory with a billet cam. The cam in a Gen 3 and a Gen 4 are the same metallurgy. How are you going to rev? My RPM LT5 T56 shifts at 7,300. Not sure what tuner did. I have the HPT file somewhere if anybody wants to study it, but I know you'd need information on the truck. Actually, if you could send us the file, we could send it to Joel and he could look at it. He might be able to help you with whatever your stalling problem is. RPM built some bad boy T56s. They're located north of Indy and Anderson. Got 2 more minutes. Not thinking it's worth aftermarket. I don't, and you're not going to get better than that. Like if you look at the LS3 intake test, blue collar, you're going to be hard pressed to beat it. The only thing that's going to be better than that, like everywhere, would be the performance design intake manifold, and that's money. So it's not terrible. I mean, I think it's kind of fast money, and I definitely wouldn't get a fast LS3. So that's a good choice, but it is money. So for yours, keep a stock on, man. Are you going to add more products to the store? Yes, we have more going up all the time. But we can't just, I mean, it's a whole procedure to get stuff up there. In September, he retuned it and I had him put it back. He claimed I had a vacuum leak, but I carb sprayed all around the intake, brake booster, no change in revs. Does it high idle or anything? Because it's got a vacuum leak, it's going to high idle. Shadow Op, send me an email and then I'll try to get you in touch with Jimmy and we'll get stuff taken care of. Richard, that's the aftermarket intake. I had my eye on. Was it worth 1,000? They're talking about picking up 20. Probably not. I think it's going to be better on the top than the LS3, but not a ton on your combination. So I wouldn't get an aftermarket intake. I would get an LS3 or a truck. Got your site saved. I'm spreading the word. Hope you have great success. Thank you. Thank you for spreading the word. Would smoke testing for a leak be that hard? No, the thing I don't know about is, do you have to, if you smoke test them, if you're blowing into the intake manifold, for instance, and you're smoking it, do you have to close all the valves when you do that? Because otherwise, isn't the smoke just going to go out the exhaust? Sent the link to the truck bus cam to a bunch of people when you said it was on sale. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Everything helps. Every little bit helps. Let me locate the file, P59 ECU. Okay. What year is your Shadow Ops? Truck intake it is. Nice. You can plug the exhaust. I know, but couldn't you just like loosen the rockers and then they would only be in the intake? One day I'll build something normal. There you go. My engine running. I have a new tune now. I'm having problems with my ground wire or something today. Installed a new throttle body. Hope it will fix the problem. Is it a drive-by-wire throttle body? I'm thinking that it is, right? Had double R transmissions build the 6L80. It's all billet, chock full of ability goodness. I went with the Circle D. They've got good stuff. Billet converter. So we'll handle all the G42 power. Nice. I want to see that thing run.
GMT 800 07 classic bow ties. So it's a 2007. Shadow Ops. And yours is a 5.7, right? Because I know displacement is going to come into play here. .7 liter truck Norris. Anyone know why you can't buy a Wilson ported intake through Summit? I didn't know that. I didn't know that you could buy one through Summit, but I didn't know that you couldn't. How about turbo injector sponsor? 2005 body style 5.7. Okay. We'll post a vid and tag you in it. What's your email? We'll send you a video. Use it to promote. Yeah, for me personally, I just want to see the thing go. I want to see somebody use a G42 and I want to see them use all of it. Like I'd like to see it on a chassis dyno and would even more so like to see it at the track. I wonder if I could build a no prep street car around the new 10-speed transmission. People are running 5,200 pounds in all-wheel drive trucks. Should be easy at 3,000 pounds or 2,500 pounds, right? Trying to figure out Chevy TH style transmission governor. Need to adjust weights and springs, cause a rear gear swap. You ever done a video testing long spark plug wires for remote mounted coil packs? I don't think I've ever done that. I don't know that I've seen that either. And you're definitely going to lose something because the ohms per foot, if you had lots of feet, it's not going to be a good situation. I don't know on a typical coil packed LS if that's ever going to be a thing. Like if you're ever going to get to the point where that's a thing, I'd be worried about them laying on something and arcing rather than the length being too long. Mac, I think I can ask Brian. They just ran LT4 stuff. Oh no, I take that back. They did get, I think they had an LT4 pump, but they had aftermarket injectors, and the injectors were not cheap. Just drug an 03 Yukon home, 5.3, nice. I want to see a variety, 12-inch to 96-inch. Yeah, like I said, I would be more worried about arcing over to something else that they would be laying on. I don't know that we'd see a length thing. Guy on Facebook has a GMT 800. Oh, and I owe somebody an apology here. I don't remember who it was, so I'm sorry. Somebody was talking about you should put, when I was talking about the brakes on this thing, upgrading the brakes, which I want to do. I'm going to put the GMT 900 stuff on there, just as a little bit better thing, not a lot, just something. And then a pad would be a good thing, a pad upgrade. And since the rotors are going to be bigger, I was talking to my buddy, my neighbor here, and he said, yeah, here are some pads and rotors that we use. He said, if you can get too aggressive on the pads, which we know from doing lots of racing that they don't last very long, and it just chews the rotors up, chews the pads up, dust gets everywhere. And so that works good for stopping, but that's not, you got to have longevity for the setup too. But the apology is for the gentleman who was recommending a power boost or a hydro boost. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do a hydro boost. That's just silly. Well, I'm never going to do a hydro boost. Well, maybe not never now. Maybe that might be possible. So whoever said that, whoever recommended that, you were right and I was wrong. And it now might be something that I would think about. And so there you go. Older vehicles with coil packs would sometimes have pretty long spark plug wires. That said, if it doesn't misfire, it should be fine. Yeah, the coil wire is usually not very long, although we run a really long coil wire in the dyno to get from where the coil is mounted back up on the plate there, the hanging plate, and then over to, sometimes on the front stuff, because we got to run front distributor and rear distributor stuff. So that coil wire is really long. So we do that. And then the plug wires from the distributor obviously are a lot longer than your typical coil wires are coming from coil packs. I tried Injector Clinic. I'll call some more injector shops and see if we can find something bigger. This LT world is uncharted compared to the LS world. Yeah, Brian did get some. There are guys that sell aftermarket LT injectors. Check Lingenfelter. They probably have some. I'll ask Brian which ones they use, but they're not cheap. Careful with brake piston size. I've made mine worse using six piston calipers. Yeah, the nice thing about this is the other thing. We could use the master cylinder that I have, or we could also upgrade the master cylinder if we want. I think that the nice thing about the Hydro Boost deal is that the reservoir in the master cylinder that we'd be using, that would be upgrading to, also is quite a bit bigger. I don't know that's a big deal. I just know that I need to bleed my brake fluid because it's really, really dark. I use power stops. You pay for them, but I push my 20 Ram 3500 from 140 to dead stop pretty quickly. I take a beating. I've got them hot. Yep. The dogs are doing good. They're laying downstairs because it's been hot, but they're always out back with me. I made a ramp for the first story or the first floor of the. You guys will be seeing it because we'll be doing videos in it of the tree fort so that they can walk up. And more Bruno than Brady, but both of them walk up the ramp now. I need to put like stairs kind of, or just little strips on it so that it has more traction. I put that green carpet stuff on, but that's still too slick. So I'm going to change that over to something else. So if you guys have a recommendation for that, it's just a sloped ramp basically going from the ground up to the first floor. But they now walk up and check it out and ask me what I'm doing and stuff. And it's all good. And Hydro Boost on my 80 dually big block, Killer B16. Yeah, but Shadow Ops with one E and B. So it's KILLERBE 16 at AOL. Grip tape might be okay. It's going to be a little rough on feet, though. So I was thinking about spraying it with like bed liner. Maybe thinking about doing that. So because I also kind of want to do the flooring, which right now is just plywood. And I'd like to put something on there. Killer Bee makes Subaru parts. Yep. It goes back to 99 and 2000 Killer Bee Racing, where I ran a Del Sol in US Touring car, and we won the championship with a car with a Del Sol that was yellow with black stripes on it. It looked like a bee because we were Killer Bee. Mostly because we had a B16 engine, and then so it just evolved from there. Put grip tape on the floor and stairs at work. Epoxy floors are too slick when it gets wet. There you go. That's my brother's truck with the L83 getting a GT42. I have a 5.7 Gen 3 Hemi Ram. I'll be throwing the Whipple on. If you go intake injector with Whipple, does stock wiring work? You're doing you're doing direct injection and port injection? Is that what you were talking about? Definitely going to put little standoffs, like little stairs on it, just elevated stuff so that you can push on. But I'd like something that's not as smooth. I thought that the carpet was going to work great because I have the piece. In fact, this is why I did it. I still have the piece from the ramp that I made so Milo could get into the truck again because he's a truck dog. So he drove around in the back of the truck everywhere. I'd go to the store. He and Maya, when she was alive before she had cancer, they would go to the store with me every time. I just come, let's go, let's get in. And then later on, I had to like pick them up and get them in there, but that was okay. They would come, I would go into the store, they would lay down in the back of the truck. I would come back out. They're like, okay, we're ready to go. Let's go. They're like, the guys would come by and pet them. And so, people would come by and these are the greatest dogs ever. I said, well, they really are. They're fantastic. Try rubber mats from Tractor Supply. Can you recommend an external fuel pump to feed E85 to 800-pound injectors, 10-inch feed? We run if it's an electric one. An electric pump is what you want. We run the brushless aeromotive pump on the dyno. That probably would be enough for that. Hydro boost is good for big cams. Boost, yeah, that's the other thing. Is see, I didn't ever plan on putting a cam that's overly sized in this truck, anyways. But he said, yeah, if later on you want to put a cam in it, and you don't have to worry about the vacuum. Big rubber floor mat should do the trick. Oh, for the inside the fort, yeah. That was a question for Sean. He said the Whipple for L83 has provision to go intake injection instead of DGI. I think it has the ability to do both. Looking at Sniper 2 dual setup. I got Holly discounts. There you go. Tractor Supply has horse stall mats, cheap. And Christopher, and you can just test the drop. I mean, you could test the ohms of the wire, one end to the other, and just see what it is. And then, but that doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you if it's going to lose power or not. On that note, it is time to go. You guys got me to stay like a lot longer, like always. But I will see you guys all tomorrow.